Chapter 8 The Enigma of Ilarion. As Eldrin ventured deeper into the shadowy depths of the caves, Arik and his companions approached the heart of their quest. The passage led them into a labyrinthine network of corridors, their walls adorned with faded tapestries and crumbling frescoes. The air was thick with dust, and the silence was broken only by the echoes of their footsteps. As they navigated the winding passageways, Lyriel's expression grew more focused. "We're getting closer. The magical signature is stronger here." Arik's eyes narrowed as he scanned their surroundings. "Stay alert. We don't know what kind of traps or guardians might be waiting for us." They rounded a corner and found themselves in a vast chamber, its floor covered in a mosaic of intricate patterns. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, upon which rested a large, ornate chest. The chest was covered in elaborate carvings, and a single glowing rune was etched into its surface. Callista's eyes sparkled with excitement. "That must be it! The Starfire Scepter has to be inside." Lyriel approached the pedestal cautiously. "There's bound to be a trap or some sort of magical ward protecting it. We need to be careful." As she studied the chest, a sudden chilling wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing the torches and plunging them into darkness. The ground began to tremble, and an eerie, ghostly light illuminated the chamber, revealing a spectral figure rising from the shadows. The figure was an ethereal being, its form shifting and writhing like smoke. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and its voice echoed through the chamber like a whispering wind. "Who dares to disturb my slumber?" the spectre intoned. "You seek the Starfire Scepter, but it is not yours to claim. Leave this place, or face the wrath of the Guardian of Ilarion." Arik stepped forward, his sword drawn. "We've come too far to turn back now. We're here to end the darkness that has plagued this land. If you're standing in our way, we'll have to defeat you." The spectral guardian let out a chilling laugh, "Then prepare to face the full force of Ilarion's curse." With a wave of its hand, the spectre summoned a horde of wraith-like creatures, their forms twisting and writhing as they emerged from the shadows. The chamber was filled with an otherworldly light. As the wraiths advanced, their mournful wails echoing through the hall. Arik's group braced themselves for battle. Bromir and Thargrim charged forward, their axes swinging with ferocious intensity. Seraphine's arrows flew with deadly accuracy, striking the wraiths and causing them to dissipate into wisps of smoke. Darian darted through the chaos, his daggers flashing as he struck at the vulnerable spots of the spectral enemies. Lyriel chanted in a low, steady voice, her magic weaving a protective barrier around the group as she called forth bolts of energy to disrupt the wraiths. Callista, standing back, her eyes glowing with focus, conjured a searing beam of light that pierced through the spectral guardian, causing it to recoil in pain. The battle was fierce and chaotic, with the wraiths swirling around them like a living storm. The spectral guardian, its form shifting and pulsing with dark energy, proved to be a formidable opponent, its attacks leaving the group reeling. But with each strike and spell, the guardian's form began to weaken. The combined efforts of the group, their skills and magic working in harmony, started to turn the tide of the battle. Finally, with a powerful burst of light from Callista's hands and a decisive blow from Arik's sword, the spectral guardian let out a final, agonized cry and dissolved into a cloud of shimmering particles. The wraiths, now leaderless, dispersed into the ether. The chamber fell silent once more, the eerie light fading as the torches flickered back to life. The pedestal and the chest remained, untouched, and waiting. Lyriel approached the chest cautiously, her eyes scanning for any remaining traps. With a deep breath, she reached out and lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, lay the Starfire Scepter, its surface gleaming with a celestial light. "We did it," Lyriel said, her voice filled with awe. "The scepter is ours." Arik nodded, a smile of relief and triumph on his face. We've come a long way, but the hardest part may still be ahead. With the scepter in hand, we can face the darkness that lies ahead and restore light to this land. As the group gathered around the pedestal, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the scepter, a renewed sense of purpose and determination filled the air. The path to victory was now within their grasp, and they would face whatever challenges lay ahead with unwavering resolve. With the Starfire scepter securely in Lyriel's grasp, the group made their way out of the labyrinthine corridors of Ilarian's palace. The palace, though ancient and decaying, seemed to resonate with an almost palpable sense of anticipation. Each step they took echoed through the halls, carrying with it the weight of their journey and the looming challenge ahead. As they emerged from the shadowed corridors into the open air, the world outside was transformed. The once murky sky was now a tumultuous swirl of dark clouds and occasional flashes of lightning. The ominous storms seemed to echo the chaos they had left behind. "We need to get to the heart of the Darklands," Lyriel said, her eyes scanning the turbulent sky. "That's where we'll use the scepter to break the curse. The journey will be perilous, and we don't have much time." The group gathered their gear and prepared for the journey. They mounted their horses and set off towards the Darklands, their path illuminated intermittently by the flashes of lightning. The landscape was a stark contrast to the once beautiful lands they had traversed. The terrain had become increasingly desolate, with twisted, gnarled trees and dead vegetation dotting the bleak landscape. The ride was exhausting, and the group maintained a tense silence, their focus firmly on their destination. The Starfire scepter, wrapped in a protective cloth, was securely fastened to Lyriel's saddle. Each member of the group knew that the fate of their world depended on their success. After several days of grueling travel, they finally reached the edge of the Darklands. The once thriving land was now a barren wasteland, with jagged rocks and eerie silence filling the void where life once flourished. In the distance, they could see the dark, swirling vortex that marked the center of the curse, a maelstrom of dark magic and corruption that seemed to consume everything it touched. "Look at that," Arik said grimly, pointing towards the vortex. "That's the heart of the darkness we're dealing with." Lyriel nodded. "We'll need to get close enough to the vortex to channel the power of the scepter. The magical barrier around it will be formidable, but with the scepter, we should be able to breach it." The group approached the vortex with caution. The air grew colder, and an oppressive sense of dread settled over them as they drew nearer. The swirling darkness seemed to reach out with invisible tendrils, as if trying to ensnare them. Lyriel led the way, holding the scepter aloft. As they neared the edge of the vortex, a powerful force pushed back against them, as if the darkness itself was trying to repel their advance. "I'm going to need to focus," Lyriel said, her voice strained. "Everyone, stay close and be ready for anything." As she channeled the power of the scepter, the air around them crackled with energy. The scepter's glow intensified, casting a brilliant light that cut through the encroaching darkness. The vortex seemed to shudder and writhe in response, its swirling tendrils of shadow recoiling from the light. However, the resistance was fierce. Dark, shadowy figures emerged from the vortex, their forms shifting and writhing like living nightmares. They lunged at the group with chilling speed, their eyes glowing with malevolence. The group sprang into action. Arik and Bromir charged forward, their weapons swinging with practiced precision. The shadowy figures were formidable opponents, but the combined might of their strikes forced them back. Seraphine's arrows flew with deadly accuracy, piercing through the dark forms and causing them to dissipate. Lyriel continued to focus on the scepter, her magic weaving a barrier of light that pushed back against the darkness. She chanted an incantation, her voice rising above the tumult of the battle. Callista, standing near Lyriel, channeled her own magic to reinforce the barrier. Her eyes glowed with intense energy as she sent beams of light into the vortex, aiding Lyriel's efforts. Despite their efforts, the vortex seemed to grow stronger, the darkness pushing back with increasing ferocity. The ground trembled beneath them, and the air crackled with the energy of the swirling chaos. "This isn't working!" Lyriel shouted, her voice strained. "The darkness is too strong. We need to find a way to amplify the power of the scepter." Thargriel, who had been fighting off shadowy figures with grim determination, paused and looked at the scepter. What if the scepter needs a specific channeling? Maybe it needs a conduit or a focal point to fully unleash its power. Lyriel's eyes widened as she considered Thargrim's suggestion. You might be right. The scepter could need something to focus its energy. As the group fought off the encroaching darkness, Lyriel glanced around and spotted a series of ancient runes etched into the ground near the edge of the vortex. They were barely visible beneath the layers of grime and corruption, but their faint glow suggested they were significant. "Lyriel!" Arik called out, fending off a particularly aggressive shadow. "What are you thinking?" "We need to activate these runes," Lyriel replied. "They might be the key to amplifying the scepter's power." With determination, the group fought their way to the runes. Lyriel, with Callista's help, began to clean the grime away and decipher the runes. They were complex, but the magic within them seemed to resonate with the power of the scepter. As Lyriel began to activate the runes, the scepter's light grew even more intense, flooding the area with a blinding radiance. The vortex writhed and roared in response, its dark tendrils retreating as the combined power of the scepter and the runes clashed with the darkness. The ground shook violently as the struggle between light and dark reached its climax. Lyriel channeled all her strength into the scepter, her voice raised in a powerful incantation. The runes flared to life, their energy merging with the scepter's light and creating a brilliant beam that shot into the heart of the vortex. The darkness seemed to recoil in terror as the beam struck the center of the vortex. The swirling maelstrom of dark magic began to unravel, its corruption dissipating under the onslaught of pure, concentrated light. The air grew warmer, and the oppressive sense of dread lifted. As the vortex was torn apart, a wave of relief washed over the group. The darkness that had plagued the land for so long was finally beginning to recede. The land itself seemed to breathe a sigh of relief as the corruption was lifted. Lyriel, exhausted but triumphant, lowered the scepter. "It's over," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. "The curse has been broken." The group stood in the aftermath of the battle, their faces illuminated by the gentle light of the now stabilized scepter. The once foreboding landscape of the Dark Lands was beginning to show signs of recovery, with faint traces of green returning to the barren ground. Arik clapped Lyriel on the back. "You did it. We all did." Bromir grinned, his fatigue evident, but his spirit high. "The land will heal, and we've won a great victory." Callista nodded in agreement. "Let's make sure we return to the kingdom. There's still much to be done." As they began their journey back, the sky above them gradually cleared, revealing a dawn that seemed to promise a new beginning. The trials they had faced had been immense, but their perseverance and unity had seen them through. The path ahead was still filled with challenges, but with the curse broken and the land on the mend, the group felt a renewed sense of hope. Their journey was far from over, but they knew that together they could face whatever lay ahead. The adventure was far from finished, but the light of their victory guided them forward, illuminating the way as they embarked on the next chapter of their quest. The Frostfire Caverns loomed before Eldrin, an imposing amalgamation of ice and flame. As he ventured deeper into the cavern's heart, he was greeted by a stunning yet daunting landscape where frost-covered stalactites hung precariously above molten rivers that coursed like veins of fire through the cavern floor. The air was a turbulent blend of biting cold and blistering heat, creating a disorienting haze that swirled around him. Eldrin adjusted the enchanted cloak draped over his shoulders, its magic shielding him from the extreme temperatures. The cloak's protective charm, a relic from the ancient mages of the Eldorian Klismos, provided a crucial barrier against the cavern's fierce elemental energies. Despite this, the heat and cold were still palpable. Each step he took a reminder of the perils that awaited him. The cavern's walls were alive with shifting patterns of light and shadow, their surfaces a chaotic dance of fire and ice. Eldrin's keen eyes scanned the environment, searching for the path that would lead him to the ethereal orb. The cavern's design was no mere coincidence. It was a labyrinthine trial, meant to test the mettle of any who dared seek its depths. The first challenge presented itself almost immediately. A massive chasm split the cavern floor, its depths obscured by a roiling mixture of fire and ice. At the far side, a series of platforms floated above the chasm, each one shifting and moving with the elemental forces. Eldrin surveyed the platforms, his mind racing as he considered the best course of action. A series of runes carved into the cavern walls hinted at a solution. He approached the runes and, using his knowledge of ancient magic, began to decipher their meaning. The runes spoke of a sequence, an elemental harmony, that would stabilize the shifting platforms. With a deep breath, Eldrin began the incantation. The air around him crackled with magical energy as he summoned a delicate balance between fire and ice. His spell wove through the cavern, affecting the elemental forces at play. Slowly, the platforms began to align, their movements becoming more predictable. Eldrin took cautious steps onto the first platform, feeling its surface shift beneath him. He moved with precision, each step a calculated measure against the elemental forces. The platforms wobbled and swayed, but Eldrin's magic held them steady long enough for him to reach the far side of the chasm. Upon reaching solid ground, Eldrin allowed himself a moment of relief. But the challenges were far from over. The cavern seemed to respond to his progress with a fresh intensity. The walls began to tremble, and the temperature fluctuations grew more violent. A low rumble reverberated through the cavern, signaling the arrival of the next trial. Eldrin rounded a bend and encountered a chamber filled with massive elemental constructs, creatures of ice and flame that had been animated by the cavern's magic. These beings were both awe-inspiring and fearsome, their forms shifting and morphing in response to the magical disturbances. The constructs immediately took notice of Eldrin, their eyes glowing with an ancient, primal intelligence. Eldrin knew that combat would be inevitable. He drew upon his extensive knowledge of elemental magic, summoning both fire and ice to counter the creature's attacks. The battle was fierce and demanding. The ice constructs launched shards of freezing energy, while the fire beings expelled torrents of molten lava. Eldrin deftly maneuvered through the onslaught, conjuring barriers of elemental protection and launching counterattacks with precise spells. His movements were a blur of arcane brilliance as he wove together elements to create shields and projectiles. Despite the intensity of the fight, Eldrin's resolve remained unshaken. He could feel the presence of the ethereal orb drawing closer, its magical energy pulsing through the cavern's core. With a final decisive spell, Eldrin shattered the last of the elemental constructs, their forms disintegrating into streams of light and energy. Breathing heavily, Eldrin pressed on. The cavern's passageways grew narrower and more convoluted, the elemental forces within them more unpredictable. The temperature fluctuations became extreme, with sudden bursts of freezing cold followed by searing heat. Eldrin navigated these hazards with practiced skill, using his magic to stabilize the environment as he moved. After what felt like hours of navigating the treacherous terrain, Eldrin reached a vast, domed chamber. The chamber's ceiling was adorned with intricate crystal formations that refracted the light into a dazzling display of color. At the center of the chamber, suspended in a floating pedestal of both ice and flame, was the ethereal orb. The orb was a breathtaking sight. Its surface shimmered with a spectrum of colors, shifting and swirling like a captured sunrise. Its power radiated throughout the chamber, creating a palpable sense of awe. But as Eldrin approached, an unsettling sensation gnawed at him, a dark undercurrent to the orb's radiant presence. The feeling was elusive, a shadow that seemed to cling to the periphery of his senses. It was as if something ancient and malevolent lurked within the orb's magical aura, an echo of a force that was neither wholly of light nor of darkness. Eldrin's heartbeat quickened, and his instincts screamed that there was more to the orb than its surface beauty revealed. Despite the growing unease, Eldrin reached the pedestal and extended his hand towards the ethereal orb. As his fingers brushed its surface, a surge of power coursed through him, intense, exhilarating, but tainted with a disquieting edge. The orb's energy was overwhelming, a tempest of magical force that left Eldrin struggling to maintain control. He quickly secured the orb, but the dark presence lingered, an ominous weight pressing against his consciousness. Eldrin's mind raced, trying to understand the source of this unsettling feeling. The orb was supposed to be a key to lost wisdom, yet it seemed to carry an undercurrent of something far more sinister. With the ethereal orb in his possession, Eldrin felt a profound sense of accomplishment, mingled with a deep-seated worry. The trials of the Frostfire Caverns had tested him to his limits, but he had emerged victorious. Yet, the unsettling presence within the orb cast a shadow over his triumph. As he prepared to leave the cavern, the chamber's elemental forces calmed, and the landscape began to shift back to its original state. Eldrin mounted Zephyraxis, the Sky Serpent, and prepared for the journey back. The celestial being's powerful wings lifted them into the sky, and the landscape below gradually transformed from the harsh, elemental terrain of the Frostfire Caverns to the lush, verdant expanse of the world outside. The quest for the ethereal orb was complete, but the unsettling presence within it weighed heavily on Eldrin's mind. The orb's power would be a crucial asset in his quest to recover and preserve the arcane knowledge of the Eldorian Klismos. But Eldrin knew that he needed to uncover the nature of this dark force before it could pose a threat. As he soared through the sky, Eldrin's thoughts turned to the future, both the challenges that lay ahead and the shadowy uncertainty that accompanied the orb. As the group began their journey back to the kingdom, the first light of dawn stretched across the horizon, casting a warm golden hue over the recovering landscape. The Darklands, once a realm of despair, now showed signs of rebirth, with patches of green pushing through the once barren soil. The trek was long and arduous, but the air was filled with a renewed sense of optimism. The trials they had endured and the darkness they had vanquished had forged a stronger bond among them. They rode with purpose, their thoughts already turning to the next steps in their quest. Lyriel, though exhausted, carried the Starfire scepter with a sense of accomplishment. Its glow, now steady and serene, signified the return of hope to their world. Her thoughts were focused on the task ahead, restoring the balance and securing their victory. Arik rode beside her, his eyes scanning the horizon with a vigilant gaze. "We've done well so far," he said, "but we need to remain cautious. The enemy won't take kindly to our success." Callista, ever perceptive, nodded in agreement. "We've faced powerful forces, but the true test will be when we return to the kingdom. We must be prepared for whatever challenges await us." Darian, always the pragmatist, checked their supplies and adjusted his gear. "We should also keep an eye out for any signs of remaining threats. Even though the curse is lifted, there might still be pockets of resistance." As they travelled, the landscape transformed further. The once dead trees now had buds, and the air felt less oppressive. It was as if the land itself was acknowledging their victory, slowly reclaiming its vitality. After several days of travel, they reached the outskirts of their kingdom, the familiar sight of the castle spires and the bustling village below was a welcome one. However, their sense of relief was tempered by the awareness that their return would mark the beginning of a new chapter. As they approached the castle gates, they were met by a throng of villagers and soldiers, their faces etched with worry and hope. The news of their success had evidently spread, and the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. King Gareth, the younger brother of Prince Auric, stood at the head of the crowd. His youthful face was set with determination, and his gaze held both gratitude and resolve. "You've returned," he said, his voice carrying the weight of leadership. "Tell me, has the curse been lifted?" Lyriel stepped forward, holding the Starfire scepter aloft. "The curse is broken, Your Majesty. The Darklands are beginning to heal, and the land's corruption is receding." A murmur of relief swept through the crowd. Gareth's stern demeanour softened, and he extended a hand to Lyriel. "You have done a great service to our kingdom. Words cannot express my gratitude." Lyriel bowed her head respectfully. It was a team effort. Everyone played a crucial role in this victory. King Gareth nodded, his gaze shifting to the rest of the group. "I see that the journey has been arduous. Please come inside. We have much to discuss, and I want to ensure that you are properly honoured for your bravery." Inside the castle, the group was welcomed with a grand feast. The long tables were laden with food and drink, and the atmosphere was filled with laughter and celebration. The people of the kingdom showed their appreciation with heartfelt toasts and cheers, acknowledging the bravery and sacrifice of the adventurers. As the evening wore on, King Gareth called the group to a private chamber. The room was richly adorned with tapestries depicting the kingdom's history and a grand fireplace crackling with warmth. "I wanted to speak with you privately," the king said, his tone more serious. "Your success has restored hope to our people, but the threat we faced is not the end of our troubles. There are still remnants of darkness scattered throughout the land, and other threats may arise." Lyriel nodded, her expression thoughtful. "We understand, Your Majesty. Our journey has shown us that while we've achieved a significant victory, there is still work to be done." King Gareth leaned forward, his gaze intense. "The Starfire scepter has played a crucial role in our success. I believe it is imperative that we safeguard it and use its power wisely. We must also strengthen our defences and be vigilant against any resurgence of darkness." Auric, standing beside Lyriel, spoke up. "We're prepared to continue our efforts. If there's anything specific that needs to be addressed, we're ready to act." The king's face softened slightly. "Your dedication is commendable. I would like to request your continued service in protecting our realm and assisting in restoring order where it is needed. The kingdom has been forever changed, and your expertise will be invaluable." The group exchanged determined glances. The road ahead was still fraught with challenges, but their resolve was unwavering. "Consider it done," Lyriel said. "We will stand by your side and do whatever it takes to ensure the safety and prosperity of the kingdom." As they left the chamber, the group was filled with a sense of purpose and unity. Their journey had brought them closer together and forged a bond that would carry them through the trials ahead. The dawn of a new era had begun, and with the Starfire scepter in their hands and their hearts united, they were ready to face whatever came next. The adventure was far from over, but the light of their victory guided their path, illuminating the way as they embraced the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead. The Frostfire Caverns had tested Eldrin's endurance and skill in ways he hadn't imagined. Emerging from the elemental tempest, he approached the grand hall of the Eldranth Sanctum, a sanctuary of serenity and arcane wisdom. The contrast was striking. Here the magic was structured and calm, a bastion of scholarly pursuit amidst the chaos he had left behind. Eldrin navigated the vast corridors of the sanctum to the council chamber, a grand circular room adorned with towering spires and intricate glyphs. Shelves lined the walls, holding ancient tomes and arcane artifacts. The air buzzed with the subtle energy of concentrated magic as he entered. The Council of the Arcane awaited him, their robes shimmering with arcane energy. At the head of the council was Archmage Valeria, a formidable figure with a deep understanding of elemental magic. Flanking her were Mage Thorn, a scholar of ancient runes, and Enchantress Lyra, an expert in magical artifacts. Eldrin, Valeria greeted with a tone of authority, you have returned from the Frostfire Caverns. I trust the trials were as formidable as anticipated. Eldrin nodded, placing the ethereal orb on the central pedestal. The orb's surface shimmered, casting shifting patterns of light across the room. The trials were intense, but I successfully retrieved the orb. However, there is something troubling about it. The mages gathered around, their expressions a mix of curiosity and concern. Thorn, with his scholarly demeanour, stepped forward and examined the orb with a critical eye. What do you mean by troubling? The ethereal orb is a powerful artifact, but it should be a beacon of wisdom. Eldrin's brow furrowed as he recounted his experience. As I approached the orb, I felt a dark presence within its magical aura. It's as if there's a force within the orb that's neither fully light nor darkness, a subtle, unsettling presence that I can't quite place. Lyra's eyes narrowed as she listened. Such an anomaly is unusual. The ethereal orb was meant to contain pure, untainted magical energy. If there's a dark force within it, it could be a sign of something significant. Valeria considered Eldrin's words carefully. It is not uncommon for artifacts of such immense power to have residual energies or ancient echoes. However, this is concerning. We need to understand the nature of this dark presence before it becomes a threat. Thorn approached the orb with a magnifying glass imbued with divination magic. As he studied the orb, intricate patterns of light danced across its surface, revealing glimpses of its inner workings. The orb's magic is indeed complex. There are layers of enchantment that suggest it has been tampered with or corrupted over time. Valeria nodded thoughtfully. We must perform a thorough examination. The orb may hold secrets that are crucial to understanding its true nature. Eldrin, you have shown great skill and resilience. I would like you to assist us in this analysis. Eldrin agreed, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. I will do whatever is necessary. I believe there's more to this orb than meets the eye. Lyra began to prepare a series of enchantments and protective wards to facilitate the examination. The mages arranged themselves around the orb, their hands weaving intricate patterns of magic in the air. The room's atmosphere grew charged with arcane energy as they delved deeper into the orb's mysteries. Hours passed as the mages worked tirelessly. The orb's aura fluctuated, revealing glimpses of its enigmatic essence. Eldrin could see faint, shadowy figures swirling within, their forms ever-changing and elusive. Finally, Valeria spoke, her voice heavy with contemplation. We have uncovered something troubling. The dark presence within the orb appears to be a remnant of an ancient force, one that predates the current magical era. It seems to be a fragment of a long-forgotten entity, possibly linked to the primordial chaos that existed before the establishment of order. Thorn added, this entity's presence is subtle but potent. It has the potential to influence and corrupt the magic it touches. We must be cautious in how we use the orb and ensure that its power does not fall into the wrong hands. Eldrin absorbed this information with a sense of growing concern. What should be our course of action? How can we safeguard against this dark influence? Valeria's gaze was resolute. We will need to perform a series of protective enchantments and rituals to contain the dark presence within the orb. Additionally, we must keep it under constant surveillance and ensure that its power is used only for its intended purpose. Lyra nodded in agreement. We should also investigate any historical records or ancient texts that might provide more insight into this entity. Understanding its origins and nature could help us mitigate its influence. At this point, Thorn cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. There is another matter that requires our focus. Despite our extensive research, we still have no trace of the Crystal of Eternity. Its absence is increasingly troubling. Valeria's expression grew serious. The Crystal of Eternity is a critical component of the arcane legacy we are trying to preserve. Its absence leaves a significant gap in our understanding of ancient magic and our ability to counteract any potential threats. Eldrin's concern deepened. Could the dark presence in the ethereal orb be connected to the missing crystal? Is it possible that the two are linked? Lyra's brow furrowed as she considered the possibility. It's worth investigating. The Crystal of Eternity is said to have been a source of balance and harmony in ancient times. If something is disrupting its location or corrupting its magic, it could explain the disturbances we're encountering. Thorn added, "We must expand our search for the crystal and explore every lead. The absence of such a key artifact could have far-reaching consequences for the stability of magic in our world." Valeria nodded in agreement. "Eldrin, while we focus on containing the dark presence within the ethereal orb, I assign you to assist in the search for the Crystal of Eternity. Your experience and insight will be invaluable in this endeavour." Eldrin accepted the responsibility with a sense of determination. "I will begin the search immediately. We cannot afford to leave any stone unturned." As the meeting concluded, the mages continued their efforts to implement protections and rituals for the orb. Eldrin, now tasked with a new mission, left the council chamber with a renewed sense of purpose. The path ahead was fraught with complexities and uncertainties, but he was resolved to uncover the truth behind both the ethereal orb and the elusive Crystal of Eternity. With the orb's dark presence lingering in his thoughts and the search for the crystal looming ahead, Eldrin prepared for the challenges that awaited him. His journey had brought him closer to the arcane truths, but it was clear that the road ahead would be filled with even greater trials and revelations.